Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones, and we're going to get you guys caught up on some of the action before the All-Star game. We're going to cover the Winnipeg Jets and Edmonton Oilers games. We're going to talk about the All-Star game, the skills competition, how the Pacific team did. They did well in one round and then not so well in the other round, but we'll get to all that. We have some practice updates with Silfverberg and Thompson, and some fan questions that kind of lead into some of the cap issues that the Ducks are going to be experiencing with hopefully Thompson returning soon here. But we're going to go back right before the All-Star break. The Ducks had two games before, and they played Winnipeg and they played Edmonton. The game against Winnipeg, the Ducks actually didn't play as well, but they pulled this one out, Eddie. They won this game 3-2. Special teams was the story of this game. The Ducks getting a power play goal and a shorthanded goal, and then hanging on at the end. And they ended up pulling this one out by one goal.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game. Obviously, like you said, special teams played good. The power play actually continued to play well as of late. Leading up until the 5-day break that they had, it's been improving, and then obviously getting the goal shorthanded. The penalty kill has been great. It was great in this game. They stopped all 5 Winnipeg power plays, which was key again to their success in this game. And of course, Bernier as well. He had a good game. Winnipeg actually outshot the Ducks in this game, so I think it was a good effort all around. You know, they got scored on first, but they rallied back and they were able to get 2 quick goals from Shaw and Raquel, and then obviously Getzlaf getting the insurance marker. Obviously helped out with Ehlers scoring the late goal for the Jets. So I think all in all a good game and a good 2 points for the Ducks.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Ducks scored again on the power play. They scored shorthanded as well, and they also killed off all 5 of the Jets' power play attempts. So special teams was really the winner in this game. And Rickard Rakell, he scored his 20th goal, so that's back-to-back seasons that he scored 20 goals, which is huge for him. We saw Getzlaf getting on the board again as well with his 7th. So the Ducks pulled this one out. They looked to, have some more momentum going against Edmonton before the All-Star break. And unfortunately, in this game, the Ducks had, a bad few minutes at the end of the second period in this game. They ended up getting down 3-0 after 2 periods, and then they ultimately lost this one, Eddie, 4-0 heading into the All-Star break.
Yeah, and the commentators mentioned it a couple times. They kind of just looked like they were ready to go into the break, and it's disappointing to say that. I mean, you don't want to say they gave up, but it was a sloppy game. They had 19 giveaways in this game. They didn't get much going for them offensively, and the Oilers had 4 goals on a limited amount of shots, and it didn't even seem like a 4-0 game. It's not like you look at it and you would say they played awful throughout the whole game, but there were points in the game where they looked pretty good, not dominant, but they looked like they were handling it all right. But the fact is, they just looked like they were ready to go into the break. The Oilers got a couple quick goals at the end of the third, and that just seemed to be it for them. They didn't come out with much effort in the third period. They didn't come out with much effort, and Draisaitl scored early on. And that kind of sealed the deal from then on.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Ducks had some chances. It looked like they, maybe were going to get on the board early in this game. But they just couldn't get, one in, and it ended up being tied at the first period. It wasn't too bad, and then the second period is where it kind of fell apart for them. The Ducks, they did win in the face-off circle, and they did have more hits, but the turnovers was huge. If you look at the 4 goals that the Oilers scored, 3 of the 4 were scored, either immediately or right thereafter a turnover. So that was kind of the story in this game. Ducks weren't able to control the puck that well, Eddie, and the way it went for the Ducks, it was kind of a big game because the Ducks would have been in first place heading into the All-Star break. Because they lost that game, they ended up being 1 point behind San Jose and Edmonton, who both had 64 points, and the Ducks had 63 heading into the break.
Yeah, and it's disappointing from their standings with Edmonton now, is they've both got the same amount of games played. The Ducks have 1 point behind them, so that, like you said, would have pushed them in front of the Oilers with the same amount of games played before the break. And they're not threat of dropping into the wild card. They're still 10 points up on the Flames and the Blues, so they're in a good position. But it's disappointing for them. I think they wanted to finish, at least they would have finished in top, but at least tied with them or tied with the Sharks, at least grabbing a point from this game. And it's disappointing that they were able to miss out on that. I mean, these games are big games, especially against the Sharks and the Oilers. They're 4-point games, and these are games that at the end of the season they mean a lot. So it's disappointing that they weren't able to grab a point from this one.
And with that, the Ducks then went into the All-Star break. Kessler and Fowler were the two participants from Anaheim. The All-Star game was in Los Angeles. They had the skills competition and then the 3-on-3 tournament. And what did you think, Eddie? The skills competition, of course. It was funny at the beginning. The LA crowd wasn't too friendly with the Sharks players. It wasn't too friendly with the Ducks players, which it wasn't something that we were surprised by. But at least Kessler's son, Riker, he came out scoring that goal on Price, and the crowd loved that. So at least LA fans don't hate kids, right, Eddie?
Yeah, it was pretty funny watching the intro and them booing Kessler and him blowing the kiss to the fans. I mean that's just him. I mean, what else would you expect really coming from him? But it was all right. I mean, They said that viewership was up almost like 70% for this All-Star game from last year's, but I don't know where they got that. That maybe the hype built up from last year contributed to the people watching it this year. I mean, I watched it, so I guess so. I mean, there's still some kind of pull for the All-Star game. I think people almost just watch it sometimes now, hoping it's going to be great. But there's a lot of just weird stuff that went on in this one. I mean, the 100 greatest players list, and that was a fun thing, celebrating the centennial season, and a little bit of controversy with that list and who was put on it. Then you've got the celebrity All-Star game and the people they chose for that game. That was a little bit different, but they also didn't air that on TV. I don't think it was on their website. And then you go into the skills competition and just the weird new event that they put in place. It's almost like they didn't consult hockey players almost. I mean, they had guys. They had the front one from just over the blue line where guys would shoot and try and pick the top corners, and that we've seen that event with accuracy shooting, so they kind of lend that from there. And then they had guys shoot from center ice where they still had the top corners picked, and the only one to make it was Brent Burns. And then they also had the bottom corners, and a couple guys made that. Then they also have them shooting from the far blue line, and they still leave the top corners open. And just 5-hole, which makes no sense. I mean, I don't know if anybody can pick the top corner from the far blue line. Nobody got close, let's just say that. And then you go to the far net, and they still leave the top corners open. I mean, if somebody can make it, the guys who were shooting it had it dropping at the far blue line. If that, or they're shooting along the ice. I don't think anybody's going to make top corner from the other side of the ice. So it's just a little bit weird the way they put it together. And then obviously they had the other events that we're used to. Riker, Kessler, we saw a shot on the shootout, and he got the only goal for the Pacific in the shootout against Carey Price. But it was an all right event. It wasn't too bad. Just a little bit of weird things that went on this weekend.
Yeah, the list, the 100 players that you talked about, there were actually 6 Ducks on there. So we wrote a little article on that and put it out there. If you didn't hear the names, it was obviously Teemu Selanne was on there, which wasn't a surprise. Scott Niedermayer, Chris Pronger, not so surprised there either. The other Ducks that didn't play as much on the team that were also mentioned, though, were Sergei Fedorov, Adam Oates, and Yari Curry. No real surprises there. Some names that some people mentioned and were asking about were Paul Kariya and J.S. Shigeru. What did you think, Eddie? Both of them weren't on there. Do you think that they should have been on there, either one or both?
I think no. It's a tough list to put together, and there's obviously, this cause for controversy when anybody gets left off, but I don't think that they should have been on it. I think they're great players. This is the 100th greatest players of all time. I mean, they're going through generations here, and there's thousands of players that you could have picked from. So no, I think they're up there. I think they'd probably be in the next 100 or just outside that. So I think maybe not for this list, but then you look at some of the guys who were added. You saw Jonathan Toews was added, and Patrick Kane was added, and Duncan Keith were added to that as well. And I mean, they're great players, don't get me wrong, but this is the 100 greatest players of all time. And you had some, Patrick Kane, I can maybe understand. Duncan Keith, I guess. And then Jonathan Toews, he's a great player, but is he one of the 100th greatest players of all time? I mean, you leave off a guy like Evgeny Malkin. Joe Thornton wasn't on the list. I mean, there were some guys that it was just surprising to see them left off. But as for Korea and Jaguar, I mean, I think it would have been a little bit surprising to see them on, but they deserving.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wasn't Korea wasn't too surprised that it was on there, but maybe J.S. Jaguar I thought would be on there. I mean, he did pretty much help the Ducks win the Stanley Cup. I mean, he really put it down in 2007. He went all the way in 2003. So I thought maybe that would be one, but that's the way the list came out. The six that are on there for sure from the that had some connection to the Ducks, all deserving as well. So that was good. And like you said, yeah, it was a little bit weird seeing certain players on there that are still playing that. I don't know. Like you said with Kane and Toews, I don't really know. I mean, I know that there's like 5 bazillion Chicago fans and they all vote for the All-Star game. So I don't know. Maybe they somehow got in on this list too. I don't know. But anyways, the top list is up there on the NHL website. We listed the 6 Ducks ones on ours, so you can check that out if you haven't seen it. And I agree with you. I watched the skills competition a little bit. And I thought everything was fine, the same old stuff, no big deal. But I agree with you. I think that line challenge thing was just kind of out there. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. You kind of have to, shoot really high and hope the puck hits those targets on the way down. I mean, it's just, maybe if they did it closer, like at the face-off circles or something like that, would have been a better difference. But what did you think of the actual, All-Star game / I call it tournament because obviously each division plays and they have this 3-on-3 deal. The Pacific. They took out the Central, but then ended up losing to the Metro in the finale. How did you think that panned out? You think it was good as last year, the same, less, any difference?
I think last year was unique because of the whole John Scott situation, and I think people, especially the Pacific team, they were actually trying to win this for him, and the intensity of the games was a little bit higher. We saw in the last game, the Pacific and the Metro game, that was a little bit higher intensity because of the $1 million on the line. Guys obviously want to, maybe not just for the million, but they want to have bragging rights to win, so they're going to try. But look at the earlier games, the 10-3 win by the Pacific, the 10-6 win by the Metro. At points in that game, there wasn't a lot of intensity, and we expect that, I guess, from an All-Star game nowadays. But you kind of just find yourself casually watching it, and you look up when you hear the goal horn, see if it was a nice goal. And I mean, maybe that's only me, but it's hard to draw your attention to it because the guys aren't out there trying, and of course they're just trying to have fun, and you're not going to lay a guy out. But just it was more fun when you looked at the end of that last game, and it was such a close game, and the intensity kicked up a little bit, and you saw McDonough make a toe save to keep Kessler from tying the game. Like that's when it got a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, it was really interesting because, like you said, the other two were kind of blowouts. 10-3, 10-6. I was the same way. I was watching them, like you said, because it's kind of like, okay, here we go. One team pulled ahead, and then you were just like, okay, it's kind of over already. And then the finale was a little bit more intense, like you said. So I still like it. I still, enjoy the format, the 3-on-3 instead of the 5-on-5. I think it is a little bit more entertaining. And I agree with you. I think last year, obviously, with the whole John Scott drama / storyline, that obviously made it, 100 times up there as far as, a storyline and headline and whatnot. But it was still a good All-Star game. I think that one of the funnier moments probably came with the celebrity game, Eddie, as opposed to the regular game where we saw Chris Pronger check Bieber into the glass. And if you haven't seen it, there's a funny photo out there of Pronger smiling at Bieber's face just rubbed up in the glass. So I think of the weekend, that was probably one of my favorite moments, and that wasn't even part of the actual game.
Yeah, that picture kind of blew up after. It was just hilarious. I mean, it's not like he laid him out, but when you look at the picture, it's just great. He's just smiling, and you see Bieber's face is scrunched up against the boards. It's a funny picture, and it's weird that the highlight, I guess, of the event comes from the new celebrity shootout before the actual skills competition and the games start. So it's pretty funny to see that.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. Like you said, it did blow up as well. So, I mean, it was an interesting weekend. Like you said earlier, I would have changed that one skill competition event, either modify it or take it out. But Kessler and Fowler did pretty well in the first game that they played. Kessler had a goal and assist. Fowler had a goal and 3 assists. So they played pretty well in the tournament as well, Eddie, and nothing to be disappointed with the way that they represented the Ducks.
Yeah, Fowler, like you said, had 4 points in the first game. Kessler played pretty well. He almost had the game-tying goal in the final against the Metro, but like I mentioned before, McDonough laid out and got a toe on the save, and it bounced off the crossbar and out. So it was exciting. They had a good tournament. Like you said, Kessler, for most of the events, actually let his son take place in most of the events that they had, which is pretty cool to see. And Fowler, I think he only participated in I think it was the relay event or something like that. He participated in that one. Would have been interesting to see him participate in fastest skater. That would have been a cool one to see. I think he would have done well in that one. But nobody was beating McDavid. But all in all, I think it was a good event for the Ducks players that participated.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it was a good weekend. And the other moment I forgot to mention that I do like that you brought up was Kessler blowing the kisses to the crowd. I thought that was hilarious too. So, Kessler being Kessler, that's why he's Kess boss. So that was hilarious too. For him to get back at the LA fans. But the Ducks came out of the All-Star break. They hit the ice today, Monday, January 30th, and on the ice there were two people that a lot of people have been looking to see, and that was Silfverberg in a non-contact sweater. So he was out there doing his normal thing, and Thompson, who had been down with the goals, had been brought back up, and he was in practice as well. He's still on the IR, but there's a lot of questions about this, Eddie, and what this means for the Ducks. And you and I even did some research to make sure, because I don't know, we're not mathematicians, people, but we looked at Cap Friendly. We figured out the math and what would happen if Nate Thompson is to come back. And we realized that the Ducks can bring Nate Thompson back and still be under the cap only by about $200,000. So it's going to be a very big predicament with the trade deadline coming up, Eddie. Whatever the Ducks are going to do, you and I have tried to come up with some options. None of them we think are really maybe going to happen, but we can kind of go into it now. With Thompson does come back. It's not official yet. He's still on the IR, but when he does, it's just this is going to be a problem that Murray's going to have to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, we spent like a half an hour before this just trying to make sure everything was right with the math and everything, but it puts them in a difficult situation because, like you said, when he comes back, there's only about 200,000 in cap space, which limits you from really calling anybody up unless you're sending guys down that are relatively at the same cap space. And it kind of limits where they're at a trade. We knew this was going to happen. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. We knew when Thompson was ready to come back, the Ducks were going to have to make some kind of move if they wanted to be at a area in their cap space that they could make deals or be able to call guys up freely. So I don't really know what they're going to do. I mean, normally we would look at it and say, well, trading Clayton Stoner, if possible, would help them extremely right now. He's got $3,250,000. Even if you can move 200,000 of that by bringing in another player who's got some cap hit from a different team, that still gives you that $2 million in cap space. But now with him on the IR, and he's probably about 2 to 4 weeks away, that puts you so close to the deadline that unless it's closer to 2 weeks, you don't know if he's going to be ready, that any team is going to trade for him at the deadline, if they're going to trade for him at all. That doesn't leave you too many more options to move. Like maybe, yes, we've talked about it before, you could move Sami Vatanen and work out a deal there, but the suitors for a player like that, there's a lot of them, but a lot of the ones where the Ducks are going to get a forward back to help them are also in cap issues. You look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, they've got extreme cap issues. They've got almost worse than the Ducks in the fact that Hedman's new contract doesn't kick into next season, so they're making deals looking forward to then as well. And you look at the Detroit Red Wings as well. They've got the worst cap than anybody in the league. They're at $80 million, so over by about $7-8 million right now. So any deal that they're going to have to be made is difficult and compounded by the fact that Thompson has to come back, and with Stoner on the IR, there's not many more options you really have.
Yeah, and that's what some of our fan questions are about. We have one from Marcos. He asked about, if the Ducks are going to be buyers or sellers of the trade deadline, who's likely to be on the trade block, who they're going to look at. And I really think all these questions are kind of moot, Eddie, because if you look at the situation now, if you bring in Thompson, and say you don't send anybody out, say the Ducks do nothing at this trade deadline, Well, if you look at the players that they could send down, your options are very limited. You could send down Bull, which I know a lot of people would be doing jumping jacks and cartwheels over, which we wouldn't argue with you. That would get you another 900,000. You could send Shaw down, would get you a little over 600. There's not many players on here that are waiver exempt either that the Ducks would send. I mean, Richie is, but they're not going to send him down. You have Casse, which maybe. But either way, if you do all these moves, the best one actually would be Bull to send down. That would get you, the Ducks would be closer to a little over $1 million, room to move some players around. But in terms of them being buyers and sellers, it's kind of hard at either. I mean, I don't anticipate the Ducks doing a whole lot because, like you mentioned, some of these other teams that maybe you would say, okay, I'm going to try to trade Stoner away if he's healthy by then, or Vatanen. It's going to be tough because you want to get back someone that costs less money.
Yeah, and I don't think it's hard to answer that question and say they're going to be buyers or sellers in a traditional sense. More teams who are sellers are looking towards next season. They're out of the playoff picture and they're looking for picks. The Ducks might be sellers in the sense that they need to move out some cap space. So we talked about Stoner possibly be on the move him out if he's healthy and if any team is willing to take him. They might be sellers in that sense. But I think if they have the cap space and if they can work out a trade, they're going to be buyers. They're going to be looking to make a deal to make the team better. But with the situation they're in and with Thompson coming back, it's difficult to do that. They don't have a lot of room to work with. Any deal that they make, they almost have to be shedding cap or be taking on a little bit less than equal value. So it makes any deal difficult. I mean, it adds a whole new aspect to any trade that Murray's going to make. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But right now they can't really stand pat. You've seen some teams in the past where they've put guys on the long-term injured reserve and they've been over the cap until playoffs, and then once playoffs start, the cap doesn't really come into to the picture, and you can bring them off the long-term injured reserve. But the Ducks don't really have that right now. They can't really throw Stoner on the LTIR and say you can just sit down there until we're ready to go for playoffs. I don't see them really doing that. So a move is going to have to be made if it's just something as simple as sending Bull down to the minors and having about $1 million in cap space to work with. And, maybe they do that, or they try and move Stoner or, even possibly Bernier. We talked about that before the podcast, possibly moving him out or trying to make a trade where we move out Vatanen.
Yeah, I mean, and that also goes to Garrett's question. You kind of answered. He was asking about whether Murray stands pat. We're going to try and get that top winger. And another option you and I came up with, and it is an off-the-wall option. I mean, everyone's going to go, what the hell is? We talked about Bernier. And I know some people are like, well, wait a sec. Well, the thing is if you try and move him, he's at, 4.1 million. You try and bring in a winger that's a little, less of a cost in the 3 million range. Maybe that could work. I mean, the Ducks did sign Faragher recently, and they just got a ton of goalies down in the minors now. They've got Bull, they've got Tokarski, they got Hackett. They got all these guys that are there. Enroth that they just acquired. They could bring any one of them up. They still meet the expansion rules with most of these goalies. Any one of them can fill in and be available, come the expansion draft. So they don't have an issue on that part either. So that's another one to watch. I mean, I don't know if they would really consider it, but you and I looked at everything, and other than trying to move a defenseman, they're not going to move any forwards. I mean, you got to keep all the guys you have right now on the forward. So, I mean, if they're going to do something, Vatanen is one that we've talked about. We're pretty sure Fowler isn't going to get moved. I mean, we think, but, based upon the way it's gone so far. But that's a possibility. I know it's kind of out there, and I know people are probably going, what the hell? But, I mean, if you're going to try and create space, and then, like we said, the Ducks get Enroth and Faragher. I mean, it kind of makes you think, why the Ducks go out and get, these guys, in a move and then give the other one a contract. It's kind of like they built up their goalies. The Ducks may have to try that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the perfect situation. This is just a very, very tricky situation. And this is another option that could be considered. I really don't think the Ducks are going to do much, though. I think that they're just going to send one of the forwards down and maybe sit on it, Eddie, unless, like you said, they can get somebody to go for one of those players. It's just a crazy situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they don't want to trade Bernier. I think he's been good. This season hasn't been great, but we didn't expect too much from him this season. Obviously, Gibson's the guy who's going to shoulder most of the load, but it's the whole injury with Stoner that kind of throws a wrench in things. I think he would have been the most viable guy to move out, and just at least free up some sort of cap space at all if anybody was willing to take him. I think we've seen him go on waivers this season and nobody took him. So, just trying to move him out for anything, just to try and gain some cap space for the Ducks would have been the most viable option. But yeah, like you said, with him on the injured reserve, Bernier becomes the second option. And with all the moves the Ducks have made lately, with bringing in Enroth, we know that was for depth in the or in the AHL, but he is also a viable backup on an NHL team. He's been a backup before. There's a possibility that he could do it again, and obviously again with the signing of Ryan Faragher down to an NHL contract, now it kind of throws that up in the air as a possibility, because the Ducks have been making, the Enroth move made sense. The Faragher move, it's a little bit interesting signing him to an NHL contract now that, Bernier possibly could be moved. And if they need to free up cap space, like you said, you're not going to trade one of those forwards. You're not going to trade the big seven that we have. You're not going to trade, Fowler or Lindholm. BX is not tradable at this point, I don't think. Unless you're trading Vatanen, you have to look at Bernier. You just have to. I mean, $4 million is a tough thing to move, especially for a backup goalie. But if you can save a couple $1 million in cap space, I mean, the Ducks almost have no choice right now.
Yeah, and then the issue too is with that him getting moved. I don't know. I just don't know if the Ducks will be able to swing anything. I just think that they're really stuck in this spot right now. It's just going to be difficult. I mean, maybe Vatanen would be the one to go, but even that's tough at 4.8 for some other team, like you talked about, to take him on and then to give back a player significantly lesser value to create room for the Ducks. It's going to be difficult. So this is the situation that the Ducks are in. We knew it was going to be, tight, but now it's really tight. So I just don't know. I think the Ducks are stuck unless they make some kind of a crazy trade with someone out of the defense. There's just not much more doing here. That's just the way it looks to me. Like you said, the other thing is you could try to bury Stoner for a while. Maybe you send him back down. It's only going to get you a portion. The Ducks did that earlier in the season. Nobody picked him up. I mean, they could try that again. But with him on the IR, and it looks like maybe for another 4 or 5 weeks, that's just not going to help the situation either. And I'll just tell you, I'm glad I'm not Murray right now, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the worst position in the league when it comes to cap space and having to make a deal right now, but it's a unique one, I think, because they would like to add a forward, I would think. I mean, that seems to be the main issue right now, is goal scoring for the Ducks. They have the assets to do it. It's just the cap space is limiting from doing it. And the timing of Thompson's comeback throws a wrench into things, with a month to go until the trade deadline. It's just, I wouldn't want to be him either. I mean, there's not many options, and any option is a difficult one. Moving Vatanen is difficult because any team where you would get a suitable return is also in a difficult cap situation. You look at, like I said, the Tampa Bay Lightning, maybe moving him for Andre Palat or for Tyler Johnson. Well, in a normal world where the cap is an issue, that's fine, but the Lightning can't really afford to take on that extra $1.5 million in cap, and the Ducks really can't do a deal where they're taking any cap back or doing a one-for-one deal where the cap is pretty much the same. They need to shed some cap. And then you look at the Detroit Red Wings with Thomas Tatar, Gustav Nyquist. They've come up as of late. Moving for them, you can't really throw any more cap on Detroit. They can't take it on either. And then again, it comes back to the same situation. The Ducks can't do a like-for-like trade. They can't do a Fowler for Van Riemsdyk trade where they take on any more cap. It's difficult. Finding a match for Vatanen is difficult. With Stoner on the IR, you can't move him. And then finding a match for a guy like Jonathan Bernier at his salary being a rental, what is he worth? How much of that salary can the Ducks really shed in any deal? I mean, it's tough. It's a really tough situation to be in for them right now.
Yeah, and I think the best thing for the Ducks to do is, a lot of people will agree, is to send Bull down. That's really the best situation. If the Ducks don't make a move, if they don't trade a defenseman or anybody for that matter, to me, that's the best one. I mean, that's the player of these forwards you look at. You look at the guys brought up from the goals or that have been with the Ducks most of the season. You're looking at Richie, Camarosa, Casse, Shaw. I think almost all of you out there agree to keep those guys up and send Bull down. And if you send Bull down, then the Ducks would be just over $1 million, and then they'd be able to bring up, some of the other guys from the minors here and there, like they've been doing with Theodore and Montour. They're under that $1 million number, so you can be able to work with that the rest of the way. That's what I would do if I was unable to make a trade. I don't see any other possibility for what the Ducks can do, and it's unfortunate because if you look at this team right now, they're playing well. I mean, we've seen them in first place for a while. Now they're just outside of it by a point. They're going to make the playoffs. How far they're going to go, I don't know. That's the question. And I think with them unable to get another one of those type players, I think it's going to be tough, Eddie. I don't know if they're going to go that far in the playoffs unless Murray pulls out some crazy rabbit out of a hat or something.
Yeah, and you have to think about it too. Is how much is one player going to help this team on forward, and where do you find that player? And again, like we said, the short-term option, the best short-term option for them right now is to probably send down Jared Bull, send him through waivers, and get a little bit of cap relief so they can work out have more time to work out a deal. But you look at this team where they stand right now, they're 7th in goals against average, they're 8th in the power play, 7th in penalty kills, so they're in the top 10 for all those stats. But then you look at their goals per game, and they're 20th. They're in the bottom third of the NHL in goal scoring. But can one player really help them that much? That's the thing you have to think about. Do you trade away a top talent like Sami Vatanen and can bring in a guy like Thomas Tatar, Andre Palat, or Tyler Johnson, or Duchesne, or Landeskog, or somebody else? If you can make a deal like that work, does that make the Ducks that much better of a team? And I think that's what they have to take into account. And it's not a fun situation to be in. I can only imagine what the management is going through. I mean, watching it as a fan from the outside is stressful enough. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do.
And I think another thing that we've talked about on the podcast before that we didn't mention on this show is, if they could just light a fire under Perry's, that would help solve some of the problem too. Like we've talked about. I mean, Perry's not played bad per se this season. I mean, he's got a ton of assists, but he's not scoring goals. And we've talked about juggling the lines a little bit, spreading the Twins apart on different lines and trying to do different things because you've got Kessler that's tearing it up. You have Raquel that's tearing it up. Silfverberg was doing well until he got hurt, and hopefully he's going to be back here soon. Like we said, he was practicing today with contact. I think that's another thing. I think he needs to step up. And maybe if the Ducks just keep the team as is, send a few players down like you and I talked about, and he turns up a notch, then maybe they will be fine. I mean, historically, he's done better the second half of the season. But that's another added element, I would think, is maybe the Ducks will have to try to get that $1 million buffer and then play with the lineup a little bit. Because like you said, if you get rid of Vatanen, or somehow Stoner gets healthier, which I really doubt, or that anybody's going to take him. But if you try to move a Vatanen or a Fowler, someone of that caliber, like you said, what kind of player are you going to get? Are you going to get a rental that you're only going to have for a couple months? And is that player going to get you what you need in these couple months? Or are you going to be able to get someone that's going to at least be here maybe another season or so? That's why I'm leaning more towards the Ducks, on the trade deadline. We'll do our thing again. We'll have the live stuff and we'll talk about it and the moves and everything like that. And we'll post the updates that day like we've done the last couple seasons. But I'm not really anticipating a whole lot going on that day for the Ducks.
No, and you talked about Perry and his struggles. I mean, if the Ducks had 4 more goals as a team right now, they would jump up about 5 spots in goals per game. So they're not that far off from the middle of the pack. And I think that's what a lot of people are waiting for, and especially the team and management as well, is Perry has to be scoring goals if they want to win. And a lot of people have stepped up. A lot of guys we talked about at the beginning of the season that had to step up if this team wants to win. We've had Richie who stepped up, Silfverberg stepped up, Raquel has stepped up immensely. He already has 20 goals this season. Kessler has scored more goals than we expected. Getzlaf has 7, which is respectable for his output in the last few seasons. And you've had guys like Casse come up and Cramarosa come up and play pretty well as well. And really, if Perry had scored 5 or 6 more goals this season, the Ducks, I don't think we'd be talking about the Ducks being at, they would still need goal scoring, but I don't think it would be as desperate as it is right now. And yeah, I think that is the issue right now. I mean, can Perry really get going at a rate that we're used to from him? And if he can't, then they need to make a trade and bring somebody in that can supplement his goal scoring struggles right now. But it's just thinks, how long can you wait for that to happen? You've only got a month before you can make any deals to make this team better. So it really comes down to how long they want to wait to see if he's going to get going.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a very valid point. I mean, when is that going to happen? We saw him turn it on for like a week and a half, 2 weeks stretch where he was scoring goals almost every other game, and then he cooled off again. So we know it's there. We know he still can do it. And, of everybody on the team, like you said, everybody else has stepped up on this team. Even Getzlaf, as you mentioned, has now started scoring. Remember, he only had like 1 goal like 2 months into the season. Now he's got 7. So they're all doing it. I mean, the pressure's really on for him, in my mind. Another kind of situation that comes up too about the Ducks I thought was interesting. This was another fan question from Nick. He asks about the Ducks going into overtime, the shootout losses, the overtime losses particularly, and again going into the playoffs and how this affects the Ducks and their killer instinct, so to speak. And do we think that that the overtime kind of inflates the Ducks as far as points, because you get more points when you lose in overtime and whatnot, and obviously it used to not be that way back in the day. It used to go to overtime and it was different. But anyways, I think the fact that the Ducks go into overtime and lose, we do harp on it, and we've harped on it on this show, of course, a couple times about how they lose almost every time on 3-on-3. But in terms of killer instinct or playoffs, I don't really look at it like that, Eddie, because, I mean, when you go into the playoffs, there is no 3-on-3 overtime. There is no 4-on-4 overtime. It's all 5-on-5. So, yes, you want them to win the overtime. Yeah, you get these points if you lose, and it does inflate the point total for the team. But as far as how it determines the Ducks playing in the playoffs or a killer instinct, I think it's a separate analysis. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it really applies like it used to when we used to have 5-on-5 overtime, and you could, I guess, apply it over to playoffs, but it's a whole different game. 3-on-3 is completely different from 5-on-5. Playoff hockey is completely different from regular season hockey, and I don't think you can make a correlation for it and say, when it comes down to it in the key moments, the Ducks haven't been able to pull out a win. And I guess that is worrying, but again, it is 3-on-3. And I think it's tough to say that because they haven't been able to do it in 3-on-3, they're not going to be able to do it in playoff overtime hockey. But I can see where they're coming from. So I think it's something they need to work on. I think it's something they've obviously tried to work on. 9 overtime shootout losses this season, that's not great. But there are other teams who are out there as well. The Ducks aren't alone in that aspect. Nashville has 8. Edmonton has 8. There's other teams like Dallas has 10. So there's other teams that have done worse than them that are at par with them. Actually, most teams are at about 7, 8, 9, or 10. So it just looks bad because we see it more often. We all watch Ducks games. We see it. It's painful. We see the Ducks lose in overtime every time they pretty much go into overtime. But I think as it comes to playoffs, I don't think it's really going to, transfer over. I don't think, they could lose in overtime in the playoffs, but I don't see it really being an aspect of their play in overtime during the regular season.
Yeah, I agree with you. To me, the thing that's interesting that he brings up is the killer instinct. And I think that's the issue that you and I have talked about before for the last, 4 postseasons. And that's been the concern for the Ducks is getting ahead of some of these teams 3-2 and not finishing it. We've seen that. We've seen that against Detroit. We saw that against Chicago. Some of these teams that the Ducks are there. They're in the position to win in game 6s. And we've harped on that because we've talked about, people get so upset about game 7s, which you have every right to get upset, about them blowing it in game 7s, but they do blow it in game 6s. So to me, it's like you should be upset about both. So, obviously different coach. The Ducks will make the playoffs. We'll have to see how it plays out. But that's something that I want to see for the Ducks in the playoffs is just that killer instinct. And I think it is there. I think that they can do it. We've seen them win a lot of close games now, recently in this last 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm not too worried about them winning close games. I just don't know how far they can go based upon the cap problems that you and I have talked about, the limited trade partners, everybody worried about the expansion draft, and ultimately, Perry not coming through. I mean, the rest of the team has stepped up, and the Ducks are a pretty decent balanced team, but I think they need a little bit more. Like you said, I mean, obviously a few more goals and they'd be a little bit higher in the standings. But that's where I look for the playoffs. I really wouldn't worry about the overtime and the shootout losses too much. I mean, yes, we do bring it up, and yes, we get frustrated about it, and I know everybody else does. But in terms of playoffs, I wouldn't worry about it. That's not my concern. My concern is more or less the Ducks scoring in the playoffs, and when they do have a chance to knock out a team, that they actually do it.
Yeah, and I think with this team, they're just a little bit short, like you said. I mean, you look at the other teams they're compared with. I think they're a better team than the Oilers. I think the Oilers are a very good team this season. They're obviously sitting above the Ducks points. I think the Ducks are just built a little bit deeper on defense. I think their offense, when it clicks and when everybody's going, is better than the Oilers. You look at the Sharks, I think they're comparable to the Sharks. I think it's close there. Again, you look at the other teams top in the Central right now. You look at Nashville. I think the Ducks are close to Nashville as well. Both teams have great goaltending, great defense. Goal scoring is a little bit absent for both teams right now, but they have guys who can get it done. And then Chicago and Minnesota are really the two top teams in the Western Conference. And I can't really count out the Ducks against either of them, and that's not being biased. I mean, we've seen close games against the Ducks and the Wild lately. I think the Ducks can match up against Chicago. They'd obviously be tough games, but I can't see them not winning. I mean, I could see it. I think it would be close, but I think they're just that one piece away. If they can get somebody into that top six that can push that goals per game a little bit higher and get Perry going, I think this is a team that can compete and get to the Stanley Cup final. From there on, I don't know. Can they realistically beat a Washington Capitals team? Can they beat a Pittsburgh Penguins team? I mean, that's what I think it comes down to. Are they good enough to beat those top teams in the Eastern Conference? I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree exactly. I think if the Ducks do somehow, Murray works some magic here with this crazy cap situation, as we've harped on most of the show, and they're able to do that, I agree with you. I think they can get to the big show. But then, of course, playing an Eastern Conference team, some of the ones that you've thrown out there, yeah, that's a whole another ball game. And the Ducks are going to have to focus the rest of this season after the All-Star break. That's what's happening this week. The Ducks are going to play the Colorado Avalanche. They're also got the Panthers and the Lightning in town. We've seen them play Colorado, and they've done pretty well against them. The Panthers, obviously, they only see twice a season, and then the Lightning, the Ducks edged them out last time they played. So this week, I would look for the Ducks to get the ball rolling, Eddie. I mean, these are some winnable games as they go here down the stretch. And as they play these three games, I'm looking for them, hopefully to win all three, but, definitely they should be able to win two of these three as this week unfolds.
Yeah, I think the Colorado one's a must-win. I mean, it's at Honda Center. Colorado's been awful this season. There's no getting around it. They've been bad. The Ducks have played well against them in the last two games. They won 4-1 on the 12th of January, and then they only scraped a 2-1 win against them on the 19th. But I think we all agreed that if it wasn't for Calvin Pickard in that game, the Ducks would have won that game a lot easier than 2-1. So I think this is a game they have to win. And then you look at the two games on the road. The back-to-back one against Florida and Tampa Bay, I think it's a little bit better. It's not as much stress as a regular back-to-back. You don't have to go too far. It's just from Florida to Tampa Bay, so I think that's a little bit easier. And these are two teams that have struggled lately. Florida's been pretty awful in their last 10. They're 4-4-2, and the Lightning have been even worse. They've been 3-5-2. So these are two struggling teams right now, teams that were tops in the Atlantic last season. It's a difficult one. I think they should be able, like you said, scrape out a couple wins. The Panthers and the Lightning have been better at home, so if they can come out and get points in each of these games, that'd be great for them this week.
And another part of this month, kind of looking ahead too, that's huge, Eddie, is most of these games for this month. You look at the schedule; the Ducks are on the road for a while, coming up here in February. They're going to start out with the 5-game road trip. As you mentioned, Florida and Tampa Bay are doable. Then you've got New York, Buffalo, Washington, and Minnesota. So, actually a 6-game road trip, excuse me. So, that's going to be huge. You're going to have some big games here. They'll come back home for some other games at the end of the month, and they're also going to play LA twice. So that's going to be some battles as well. So you're looking at this next month. It's going to be tough. Most of the games are on the road. You've got 8 games on the road. You've got 3 games at home. So this is a big month for the Ducks as they move down, the stretch for the remainder of the season, Eddie.
Yeah, and it, like you said, it's a big test, and they've got 3 teams that are going to be huge tests for them on this road trip. You've got the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, you've got the Capitals at Verizon Center, and then you finish off the road trip against the Wild, and those are 3 of the best teams in the league right now, and you're playing them in their home arena, so it's going to be tough. The Ducks have been okay on the road. They're 11-9-6. It's not awful, but you would hope that they could pick up at least 4 out of the 6 wins on this road trip. The 3 teams that I guess you should be beating if you're going to look at this are the Sabres, the Panthers, and the Lightning. But this is a real test for them. I like you said, a month where you're playing 8 of these games on the road. I guess you can look at the Arizona and the LA games, and I guess they're not typical road games. They're not like you're going across country and playing in New York or playing in Washington, but they're still in the other team's arena, so they're going to be tough, and this is a big month for them. I think it's going to define their positioning in the Pacific Division based on how well they do at least on this first 6-game road trip.
Yeah, I agree. After they have this home game against Colorado, this big road trip is going to be huge, especially if they activate Nate Thompson, get him back in there as well, as we talked about earlier. So that's really going to dictate what's going to happen. We want a really good start as the Ducks go through the rest of the season here towards the playoffs. With that, not too much other news around the league. Obviously, we talked about the All-Star game and all the festivities and the 100-player list and whatnot. Some other interesting news did come out, though, today about the Islanders, Eddie. It looks like in a couple seasons they're going to be looking for a new home.
Yeah, interesting news that came out saying that it looks like the Barclays Center is dumping the Islanders after the 2018-19 season. From what I read from this article that was tweeted out from Bloomberg, is the financial operators at the Barclays Center believe that they'd make more money from just concerts and other events than they do from Islanders hockey games like they are already. The Islanders apparently have the 3rd worst attendance in the NHL right now. It's just about 12,828 is their average attendance, which is, barring another word, which is just awful this season. And it's an interesting situation. I don't think I've ever really seen an NHL team get booted out of their arena. The Islanders situation has always been interesting since they've moved to Barclays Center. Obviously, the stuff they had with Nassau and how far it was and the difficulty of the players having to play on the island and everything like that. So it'll be weird. Right now I don't even know where they would go, and even the article doesn't say they don't really know where they would go. They're looking at putting an arena across from Citi Field, possibly having an arena there for the Islanders, but right now the only home that they have is Barclays Center. They don't have anywhere else to go. They have a couple seasons to figure it out, but this is definitely a weird one. I don't think I've ever seen this before.
Yeah, and part of the attendance problem is maybe it's that car. You know what? Maybe they need to move that car out of this, blocking those few thousand seats or whatever. You know what I mean? No, I'm just kidding. But I always crack up watching those games there because you see the rink and then there's a car next to the rink. It's like, what the hell is that? So I don't know. I think that you're right. I don't think it was designed necessarily for hockey. They had the drainage issues. They're big on the concerts and whatnot. Could you imagine something like that at Honda Center? Could you imagine they go, hey, yeah, we're making more money on the concerts. Hey, Ducks, you can just get out of Honda Center. It'd be like, what the hell are you guys talking about in Anaheim? It'd be like, where would the Ducks go? Could you imagine some kind of problem like that? I mean, it's just crazy.
No, I mean it is crazy. I mean it's a beautiful arena. Don't get me wrong. I mean it's a new arena. It's great, but it like you said, it's not built for hockey. And from all like a lot of the quotes and stuff they had in this for fans, there's a lot of issues with seeing the game in the arena. Again, like you said, with the car and the seating issues and the ice issues and everything like that. It just doesn't seem like it was made with hockey in mind. And I don't think it was. It was made for the Nets, and it was made for concerts and other events and stuff like that. And hockey came third, and it's becoming an issue for them. It's becoming an issue for the team and for the arena itself. And if they think they can make more money without the Islanders there, then I think, it's best if they don't play there. I mean, you don't want to play in an arena where, one, they don't want you, and two, it's just not a great arena to play hockey. It's one of the worst in the NHL to play hockey games, and the ice is terrible. I mean, it's just not built for hockey, and I think it's good for them to get out and get into an arena where it's built for hockey, where where they can attract more fans, and I mean, they've looked at possibly returning to Long Island, but it'll be weird. It'll be. I mean, I don't know where they're gonna go. I think if they return to Long Island, there's a lot of fans from previous there when NASA was there. It's their history is there, but of course they've expressed the interest. The reason they even moved to the Barclays Center in the first place is they're looking to get more fans in the New York area. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up deciding to go in the next few seasons.
Yeah, I guess the only good thing is they do have, at least a couple years to try and figure this out. It's not, not a lot of time. I mean, especially if some kind of new arena has to be built. But yeah, what a problem for them. I mean, that's unfortunate too. And the Islanders are, they're a staple in the NHL just as much as most of these other teams are, and hopefully they'll get that situation resolved. But with that, this week, like we talked about, the Ducks got 3 games coming up here. They're going to start the big road trip. We hope they go out there guns a-blazing and get a good start off after this All-Star game. So with that, we'll be back next week. We'll cover some of the games as they start the road trip. Maybe some moves will get made or something will be done to try to figure out this cap situation that's just out of control. But otherwise, with that, stick with the Ducks. We'll see you in a week, and let's go Ducks.